Hello, whisperers. Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy tonight's tale, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It helps more than you know. Now, dim the lights, and let's begin tonight's story. You never want to hear the phrase lethal force authorized come through the radio unless you're already holding a rifle. I'd barely finished stripping down my gear from a morning training drill when the call came in. The voice on dispatch was clipped, too steady to be routine. All tactical response, report to the armory, riot and D block. Lethal force authorized. Repeat, lethal force authorized. That last part hit like a hammer. This wasn't a cell extraction or some idiot with a shank. This was war inside concrete walls. The armory lit up fast. Briggs, our team leader, was already halfway into his riot suit when I walked in. "Mask up, load up," he barked, not even looking at me. Shotguns for the front, suppressed rifles for the push. Flashbangs in every stack. We're not taking prisoners. I slid into my armor, plates, padding, forearm guards, feeling the weight settle over my shoulders. Helmet down, visor locked. My carbine felt heavier than usual when I chambered the first round. Martinez, our breacher, racked his shotgun and grinned like he'd been waiting all month for this. Reed checked the glass on his rifle scope. Cole, the rookie, was moving like his gloves were 2 sizes too big. We rolled out in a 4-man stack, boots pounding the polished concrete, alarms screaming overhead. The air smelled of smoke from somewhere upstairs, the tang of burned wiring drifting down the stairwell. Past C block, inmates were pressed to the bars, hooting and howling like they could smell blood. When we reached D block's reinforced door, the first thing I noticed was the pounding. Not fists, full-body hits, shaking the steel. The viewing slit was smeared dark red. Briggs glanced at us, voice muffled behind his helmet. Flash, breach, sweep, on me. Martinez stepped forward, set the charge, and we all turned away. The blast was deafening in the confined hall. Smoke rolled out, and we moved. Inside, the corridor was chaos in red light. Cells were open, some doors twisted off hinges entirely. The first shape came at us from the side. An inmate, shirtless, covered in blood that wasn't all his own. He was moving wrong, too fast, like his bones didn't care about the weight of his body. Briggs put 2 shots in his chest that did nothing, so he put 1 in the head. The man folded instantly. That's when the rest came. They poured out of cells and side corridors, sprinting like predators, jaws snapping. Some wore orange jumpsuits, others just rags. Half had their faces torn open or limbs bent in ways that should have stopped them cold. It didn't. We fired controlled bursts, the air thick with the hiss of suppressors and the deafening bark of Martinez's shotgun. One got too close. I slammed my shield into its face, felt bone give way, then stomped down hard until it stopped moving. My boots were already slick. Cole was holding the rear when 3 of them rushed him from a side cell. He fired wild muzzle flashes strobing the hallway, but they kept coming. One leapt high, arms wrapping around his neck, dragging him into the wall. "Cover!" I roared, swinging to clear the gap. Martinez blasted the attacker off him at point-blank range, blood misting the air. Cole's visor was smeared, breathing ragged, but he was upright. Then the block's central lights died. The backup strobes kicked in, red and white, flashing slow, each beat revealing the shadows still moving toward us. Somewhere deep in the block, I could hear the scrape of feet. Too many feet. Briggs' voice came low over comms. "We hold here or we're dead." And just like that, they were coming again. The strobe made it worse. Every flash froze the corridor in a new snapshot of hell. A jaw hanging loose, a prisoner halfway through turning, blood mist still suspended in the air. Then darkness again. Then another flash. We kept firing, controlled bursts, always for the head now. The chest shots had just been a waste of ammo. My ears were ringing even through the helmet, but the infected didn't care about noise. They didn't flinch at gunfire, didn't slow when rounds punched through them. Shift left, clear the admin side, Briggs called, already moving. We slid across the corridor, rifles up, covering each other as we advanced. The red wet streaks on the floor were slick underfoot, and the sprinklers had kicked in somewhere deeper in the block, dripping cold water over everything. Martinez pushed forward, shotgun blasting holes in anything that moved wrong. One prisoner tried to rush him from a cell, not infected, just desperate, and Martinez slammed the stock into his jaw so hard it dropped him cold. No time for cuffs. We weren't here to save anyone. We reached the central control booth for D Block, a glass-walled box elevated above the floor. It was supposed to be secure, but the glass was shattered inward. The chair tipped over in a smear of blood. Two of the control officers were inside, both on the ground. One was missing his entire face from the nose down. The other was twitching. "Don't," Briggs warned, but Cole stepped closer. The twitcher rolled onto all fours in a way that wasn't human and lunged, smacking into the interior glass wall with enough force to spiderweb it. Reed didn't hesitate. One round through the head. The body went still. Briggs keyed his comm. Command. D-block secured enough to... Static. I tried my own channel. Just hiss. No dispatch. No overwatch. That wasn't supposed to happen unless... The steel groaned. Doors started clicking open, one after another, the sound echoing down the hall like a chain reaction. It wasn't just D-block anymore. You could hear it beyond the walls, the deep clunk of every electronic lock failing. Martinez swore under his breath. "That's the whole damn wing." The riot alarms cut out, replaced by something worse. The raw human screaming from blocks we weren't in. The sound of bodies hitting floors, fists pounding on steel. Cole wiped at his visor, still smeared from the last fight. "Command's not doing this," he said, voice shaking. "Something's killing the systems." I didn't say it, but I'd already noticed the pattern. It wasn't random. The locks were opening in sequence like someone was feeding the infected corridors of fresh meat. The hallway to the east lit up with muzzle flashes. Not ours. Gunfire from the next block over. Then silence. Then the footsteps again, heavier this time, echoing toward us. Briggs stepped to the center of the corridor, rifle up. "We're moving to G Hall. Regain control or die here." We formed up. Behind us, the open cells began spilling figures into the corridor. both infected and uninfected, blurring together in the strobe light. Ahead, G Hall's heavy gate was the only way out. We moved fast. The roar behind us moved faster. G Hall's gate was already rattling when we got there. Something was pounding on the other side, hard enough to bow the steel inward. The air was heavier here, hotter, wetter, and stank of sweat, blood, and the sour reek of infection. Briggs slapped the override panel. Nothing. He swore and jammed his breaching key into the mechanical bypass. "On the pop," he said, voice low in comms. Martinez stepped up beside him, shotgun ready. Reed and I took opposite corners, rifles aimed down the hall behind us. The infected were coming. No discipline, just a rolling wall of bodies. The gate clunked, hissed, and slid open 1/2 meter. The pounding stopped, dead quiet. "Move," Briggs snapped. We slipped through the gap into darkness. G Hall's lights were out entirely, just narrow slats of light from the guard catwalk above. The cells here were stacked 2 tiers high, the shadows deep enough to hide anything. My boots squelched in something thick. Halfway in, the pounding started again, but this time it came from inside. The shadows erupted. Shapes dropped from the catwalks, hitting the floor hard enough to crack concrete. One landed close enough for me to see its mouth already open, teeth slick. I put 3 rounds through its head, felt spray pepper my visor. The comms crackled. Finally, a voice. "Unit 4, this is command. Multiple breaches in A, C, and G. Containment impossible. Evacuate immediately." We didn't get to reply. A gunshot went off somewhere in the block, then another. We pushed toward the far exit, leapfrogging cover to cover, or what passed for cover here, just concrete pillars and busted tables from the day room. Martinez was first to go down, not dead, just hit hard. An infected came from a cell door, low and fast, slamming him into the wall so hard his helmet cracked the cinder block. I was on it in 2 steps, driving the muzzle of my carbine into its throat and firing until it dropped twitching. Martinez coughed blood inside his visor, but waved me off. "I'm good. Move." We moved. The exit loomed ahead, another reinforced gate, and beyond it the open yard, lit under floodlights. But between us and that gate were at least a dozen shapes, both prisoners and infected, tearing at each other and then turning in unison toward us. "Frag out," Reed muttered. He pulled the pin, lobbed it low. The blast ripped through the bottleneck, a brutal, concussive slap that made my teeth ache. The hallway filled with dust and ringing ears. We pushed through what was left of them. Close range now. No room for long bursts. It was elbows, boots, and muzzles shoved into mouths before firing. My shield arm was numb from the hits it took, but I kept swinging. We hit the gate hard, Briggs smashing the override with his rifle butt. It gave way just as the last of the infected in the block surged. The yard air hit like ice after the heat of the block. We spilled out, dragging Martinez, slamming the gate behind us. It didn't matter. The pounding started again. The yard was never supposed to feel small. Out here you had space, 100 meters from fence to fence, 4 guard towers with overlapping fire lanes, and nothing but hard ground and cold air between. But tonight the towers were empty, the floodlights jerking back and forth like they were hanging loose from their mounts. One had already burned out, leaving a wedge of the yard in deep shadow. We didn't have time to check bodies for life signs. We moved straight for the administration wing, cutting across the open ground in a low sprint. Every step felt louder than it should have, boots hammering frozen gravel. Halfway there, Reed went still. Movement, Tower 3. I glanced up. A silhouette was leaning out of the guard shack window, a guard, helmeted, vest still on. He raised one arm like he was about to wave. Then he pitched forward. The body hit the ground face first and didn't move. We were 20 meters from admin when the pounding started on the inside of the doors. Not fists, shoulders, full bodies slamming again and again. The steel flexed. Briggs threw up a fist and we stopped. Something in the shadows moved. It came out of the dead wedge between the floodlights, a guard in full riot armor, helmet still strapped. At first, I thought he was alive. Then he sprinted at us, not holding his rifle, but dragging it like a club. His visor was cracked wide open, and through the gap, I saw his mouth, black with blood. Martinez didn't even wait for the order. He leveled the shotgun and fired. The slug slammed into the man's chest with a deep concussive whoomp, knocking him back a full step and twisting his torso hard. His armor plate cracked along the edge, but he barely stayed down for half a breath before surging forward again. The head, Briggs barked. Second blast hit the side of his helmet, snapping his head sideways and dropping him to one knee. Martinez stepped in and fired the third, straight through the eye slot. The man pitched backward, armor clattering on the frozen ground, finally still. That last shot echoed across the yard like a dinner bell. The shadows moved. Dozens of shapes came spilling out. Inmates, guards, infected, all charging. We had no choice. Briggs pointed to the medical wing door beside admin. Through there. We hit it at full speed, boots skidding on linoleum as we burst inside. The stink hit first, bleach, copper, and rot. Gurneys overturned in the hall, 4 poles bent into hooks. A crash from deeper in, then wet chewing sounds. Reed took point, rifle sweeping. We passed an isolation room with the glass spiderwebbed from the inside. The patient bed inside was empty except for the leather straps, all torn. Halfway down the hall, they came from both ends. We stacked against the wall, firing down both corridors. Suppressed rifles hissed, brass bouncing across the floor tiles. Martinez blew the hinges off a side door, and we ducked through into a narrow staff passage. Something slammed into the opposite side of the thin, dry wall, hard enough to bow it inward and crack the paint. We didn't wait to see what. The staff passage spat us out into admin. The pounding we'd heard earlier was louder now, right outside the main sally port. Prisoners, infected, both. Reed was reloading when one of them came over the desk. Not infected, just a man with a shank and murder in his eyes. He used the desk to vault and tackled Reed to the ground. The infected were right behind him. I grabbed for Reed, but Briggs yanked me back. His voice was steel. "He's gone. Move." The last thing I saw was Reed's legs kicking as the pile swallowed him. Then we were through the next door, slamming it behind us. For a second, the pounding was muffled. But only for a second. The admin wing wasn't going to hold. You could feel it in the way the doors shuddered in their frames with every hit, the hinges groaning under the weight. Briggs didn't even try for the sally port. "Tunnels," he said, already moving toward the access stairwell. The maintenance level ran under most of the prison. Concrete corridors wide enough for utility carts, crisscrossed with low-ceilinged crawl spaces for wiring and plumbing. They weren't on the standard evac plan. Most staff didn't even know they connected to the old work yard. The stairwell reeked before we were halfway down. Mold, stagnant water, and something sharper underneath, like sweet rot. Martinez pulled his balaclava up over his nose. "Smells like something died in here." Something had. The bottom of the stairs opened into a corridor ankle-deep in water, littered with trash, broken pallets, and, further down, a tangle of limbs. At first I thought it was one body. Then the pile twitched. Arms, legs, and torsos jammed into a drainage grate, too bloated to pull free. The skin on some was black with decay. Others looked fresh. We kept moving. Our boots splashed, every step sounding like an alarm in the enclosed space. The only light came from our weapon-mounted lamps, cutting narrow cones through the darkness. Halfway to the yard access, Martinez froze and raised a fist. Ahead, the tunnel narrowed, shadows moving just at the edge of the light. They weren't infected. 3 prisoners, all gaunt, eyes wide, each holding something sharp: a filed-down wrench, a jagged piece of steel pipe, a knife carved from plexiglass. The lead one stepped forward, voice raw. "Drop the gear." Briggs didn't answer. He just fired. The first round caught the man in the throat. He dropped without a sound, blood spraying the wall. The others rushed. The next 10 seconds were a blur of muzzle flashes, water splashing up into my visor, the grunt of bodies hitting concrete. My carbine jammed on a spent casing, and I had to shove one man back with my shield, driving the edge into his temple until he stopped moving. We pressed on, faster now. The air was getting worse, thick, humid, metallic. Every breath tasted like rust. Somewhere behind us, the pounding on admin's doors had stopped, which meant they'd broken through. We reached the last stretch before the yard hatch, a straight run maybe 20 meters long. The echo behind us grew louder. Boots in water. Too many. "Infected," Briggs said flatly. They appeared at the far end of the tunnel, filling it shoulder to shoulder. The space amplified the sound. Snarls, splashes, their feet hitting concrete in perfect chaos. Martinez looked back at us, then at the hatch ahead. It was chained and padlocked, heavy duty. We'd need time to cut through. "I'll hold 'em," he said, already reaching for a frag. Briggs shook his head. "We can fight through." "No," Martinez cut him off. "This is a bottleneck. Only way you get out is if they're too busy eating me to chase." I started to say something, but the infected were close enough now that I could see their eyes in my light. Martinez pumped the shotgun one last time, grinned under his visor. "Go." We ran. The chain clinked as Briggs cut it with the bolt cutters from his kit. Behind us, Martinez's shotgun barked, each blast echoing like thunder in the tunnel. Then the sound was swallowed by screams, his and theirs, followed by the hollow crump of the grenade. The shock wave hit my back, hot air slapping the walls. We didn't look back. The hatch swung open, spilling us into the icy air of the workyard. For a second, it felt like we'd made it. Then the floodlights revealed the far gate, chained shut, and the shapes already pouring in from the other side. The hatch slammed behind us, and for a second, all I could hear was my own breathing inside the helmet, ragged, loud, like it belonged to someone else. Then the floodlights burned into my visor, and the noise hit. They were already in the yard, dozens of them spilling in through the far gate like a living wave. Prisoners, guards, half-dressed bodies with skin hanging loose. Some sprinted, others stumbled. All of them were coming for us. Briggs didn't waste a word. He opened up, rifle bucking against his shoulder in sharp, disciplined bursts. I fell in beside him, sight picture bouncing as I worked to keep my shots high. Every headshot dropped one, but there were too many. The gaps closed before the bodies hit the ground. We moved sideways, working toward the perimeter fence. The frozen dirt sucked at my boots, slick in spots where blood had pooled and gone half ice. Muzzle flashes turned the scene into a slideshow of gore, a face mid-scream, a jaw torn away, a hand reaching for my shield. One of them hit me full on, all weight and teeth. My back slammed into the fence hard enough to rattle the chain link. I drove the shield into its neck, pinning it there, and emptied my pistol into its face until the slide locked back. When it slid to the ground, it left a smear on the metal. "Fence!" Briggs shouted. He dropped his rifle and was already at the bolt cutters, working the chain on the outer gate. I reloaded fast, covering him. The infected were breaking into a full sprint now, their footsteps pounding like drums in my ears. I picked targets at 10 meters, then 5. One grabbed Briggs's arm before I could drop it. He tore free, but not before its teeth sank into his forearm through the armor gap. He didn't even flinch, just tossed me the cutters. "Go." I caught them, hands slick in my gloves, and went to work on the last link. The steel screamed with each squeeze. Briggs was behind me, firing in single shots now, slower, deliberate. When the chain finally gave, I shoved the gate open just wide enough to squeeze through. Briggs didn't follow. "Move it, officer," I yelled. He just shook his head, backed up a step, and emptied the last mag into the wall of bodies closing on him. The muzzle flashes lit his face behind the visor, calm, steady, resigned. The tide hit him all at once. He disappeared into it. I heard him shout something, but it was swallowed in the roar. Then nothing but the sound of them feeding. I ran. Cold air tore at my lungs as I cleared the fence, stumbling down the embankment outside the yard. I didn't stop until I was halfway up the hill beyond the perimeter. From there I could see the whole prison, floodlights swinging wildly, smoke pouring from a roof, shapes still moving in every open space. The radio on my shoulder crackled, a voice breaking through the static. "All units, multiple outbreaks confirmed. Other facilities compromised. Repeat, multiple facilities compromised. Beware. Viraclean." I let it hang there, staring at the yard below. The gates wouldn't hold. And there was nowhere far enough to run.